This is Duke University.
And in your conceptualization of Orientalism and world literature, historically speaking, how would you situate them? What are some moments where you see intersections?
Yeah, so I mean, once I had sort of really gotten underway with the research, it really became clear to me very quickly that one of the biggest problems with some of the most prominent versions of the idea of world literature today, whether it's Franco Moretti or
Casanova,
Pascal Casanova or David Damrosch, even, who's, by the way, a teacher of mine, that one of the big problems with these formulations was that they did not seem to understand that the very concept emerged out of what Said called Orientalism. That is to say, a whole set of new humanistic knowledge practices in the late 18th century and early 19th century that for the first time began to think of the whole world as a kind of assemblage of textual traditions, as a kind of coming together of different linguistic and civilizational traditions of writing.
Philological moment.
Yes, exactly. So the late 18th century, this great sort of discovery of the languages of the East and all the philosophical and philological transformations that those discoveries brought about, even for philosophers like Herder in Germany, and certainly for the actual Orientalists themselves. Well, Herder was an Orientalist himself also, you know. He did a great deal of work on Sanskrit and the classical Indian corpus. So that, it seemed to me, was the basic misunderstanding in the contemporary discussion of world literature, that it was seen as a concept that overcomes the antagonisms that we associate with something like Orientalism. And so I wanted to put...
A kind of brotherhood.
Yes, exactly, or sisterhood. I wanted to put Orientalism really at the center of the discussion of world literature. In some ways, really, to put it very strongly, I would say, world literature is Orientalism. I mean, it's really inseparable from it, it seems to me.
And you give pride of place to what you term Calcutta Orientalism. If you could just take a minute and tell us a little bit about that particular context historically.
Right. So obviously, late 18th century Orientalism in Europe, in France or Britain, in France above all in the early decades, in Paris really, has many different strands within it. There is a kind of Semitic languages strand, there's a Sinophone kind of strand. And I focused on the sort of Indo-Aryan strand, which begins in the discovery of the Sanskrit language by a group of officials of the British East India Company who were not professional scholars. This was their kind of gentlemanly hobby, as it were. They were officials of various sorts in the administration, where they were civil, military officials. And they formed in the 1780s the Royal Asiatic Society in London, in Calcutta. And Calcutta was the capital of the British Empire in India, of course. So they were all based in Calcutta, these individuals. And chief among them was William Jones, who's credited with the idea that Sanskrit as a language is genetically linked, is a sister language to Greek and Latin. This is now, of course, the very commonplace idea of the Indian-European family of languages. Right. And Jones is the first person to vaguely suggest this. It's not at all developed in the scientific manner that it becomes even within 15, 20 years or so of his death. And it's really in this discovery of the idea of Indian civilization, a unique civilization in the past based in Sanskrit textuality, that an idea like world literature begins to emerge for the first time. As a kind of assemblage, as I said, of different national and civilizational traditions.
So what type of reading practices do you encourage your students, or would you advocate in order to, in some ways, resist this convergence of world literature and Orientalism? I mean, would it be a contrapuntal reading? Would there
yes, I think Edward Said's idea of contrapuntal reading, that is to say, to read a text always in relation to some effect that it produces or is itself affected by in some very different social world, as it were. That no text can be sort of dealt with in a kind of isolated way, and that you have to think about them in a kind of musical conversation with each other, which is not to say it's not sometimes violent and forceful interaction, but nevertheless to sort of think in that way, so that and that's really what I try to inculcate in the classroom for students. There are different ways of doing it in different contexts, but that's the basic idea, I would think.